Game of Thrones on HBO has been a worldwide phenomenon. With season 7 now behind us and only one season left to go, it's time to look back on some of the more memorable moments from the show.
I think that sounds like a wonderful idea.
In this video, we'll go in depth to show you 10 cameos that you may not have noticed. Warning, there are spoilers for the show ahead. Warning! So if you aren't all caught up with the action, you should probably stay up for the next week binge watching all 67 episodes before watching this video. Before we get started, be sure to click that red subscribe button to stay up to date with all your favorite movies and shows at CBR.
There's something Gail thinks is not good?
Well, she started off by making it kind of honest with her body language that she didn't vote for me.
Oh, really?
President George W. Bush. The first big cameo in Game of Thrones might have been unintentional. In the season 1 finale, the prosthetic head of the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, appears on a spike. The head is visible when young King Joffrey shows Sansa Stark, his bride-to-be, her father's severed head along with that of her nursemaid. While the prosthetic head is wearing a wig and facing away from the camera, it's still quite recognizable in profile as the former president's noggin. Once this was revealed via the commentary on the DVD, HBO and the showrunners, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, apologized profusely for the mistake. They insisted there was no political commentary intended by putting 43's head on a spike. "We use a lot of prosthetic body parts on the show, hands, arms, etc.," they said in a statement. "We can't afford to have them all made from scratch, especially in scenes where we need a lot of them, so we rent them in bulk." After the scene was already shot, someone pointed out that one of the heads looked like George W. Bush. "We meant no disrespect to the former president and apologize if anything we said or did suggested otherwise."
If we had known what we would have to know to do this well, I think the intimidation factor may have gotten the best of us.
David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Perhaps as penance for the former president's misappropriated head, or perhaps in spite of it, the showrunners used their own faces for the gallery in the House of the Black and White in Season 5, Episode 6, Unbound, Unbent, Unbroken. Jaqen H'ghar gives Arya a special Bravosi coin at the end of Season 2 and tells her to say the words Valar Morghulis to any Bravosi man she meets if she wishes to find Jaqen again. In High Valyrian, Valar Morghulis means all men must die. At the end of Season 4, Arya shows this coin to a Bravosi ship captain, who takes her directly to Braavos. The House of Black and White is a temple on an island in Braavos dedicated to the many-faced god and home to the Faceless Men, a band of ancient assassins. Arya joins the order in hopes of becoming a many-faced assassin as a way to exact vengeance on the people who have harmed her family. After undergoing a grueling training regimen, Arya ultimately abandons the order, but not before stealing a few faces from the gallery. It's in this gallery of stone pillars covered with the faces of the dead that we find the faces of David Benioff and D.B. Weiss.
I think in episode 3, I had to find voices of 240 different characters, and in episode 5, I had to find voices for 310 different characters.
Roy Dotrice. Roy Dotrice is famous for voicing all of the A Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks. Dotrice is no stranger to fantasy and science fiction. His work has been featured in Babylon 5, Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, where he played Zeus, and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, where he played King Balor. Dotrice first met George R.R. Martin on the set of the television show Beauty and the Beast, where Martin was a screenwriter, script editor, and producer. This was Martin's last TV show before he left Hollywood to begin writing A Song of Ice and Fire, the series of novels Game of Thrones is based on. He later asked Dotrice to voice the audiobooks, for which he received a Guinness World Record, voicing 224 characters in one audiobook. Martin initially cast Dotrice to play Grand Maester Pycelle, but Dotrice was forced to turn down the role due to poor health. The role was filled by fellow thespian Julian Glover, but Dotrice came back in the second season episodes, The Ghost of Harrenhal and Blackwater, to play pyromancer Helene. The wildfire Helene and his fellow pyromancers created was used to burn the fleet of Stannis Baratheon in the Battle of Blackwater, and later used by Cersei Lannister to destroy the Great Sept of Baelor in the Season 6 finale. Mastodon. Season 5, Episode 8, titled Hardhome, was the first chance we had to witness the true power of the Night King and the army of the dead. Jon Snow travels to Hardhome, north of the Wall, to recruit the wildlings to come south and join the Night's Watch in their fight against the undead army. But they arrive too late, and before they are able to evacuate the thousands of wildlings camped outside Hardhome, the Night King attacks. This massive shoot involved 400 extras. Originally, the sequence was set to be filmed in Iceland, but as the scale of the production grew and rewrites to the script, they decided to build a set in Northern Ireland, where where the Castle Black set is located, to accommodate the 15-day shooting schedule it required. After receiving fight choreography training, 220 extras were selected through tryouts. Among those was the American heavy metal band Mastodon. The band members Bill Kelleher, Brent Hinz, and Brand Daler are huge fans of the show, and apparently showrunner D.B. Weiss is a fan of the band. The trio played wildlings brought back as undead minions for the Night King's army. The band didn't have their music featured on the show, but they did release a track on the Game of Thrones mixtape titled White Walker.
Grey Worm want Missandei, but Grey Worm have no junk.
Comedian Steve Love. Comedian Steve Love made a name for himself doing fantastic impressions on YouTube of many of the Game of Thrones characters, from Jon Snow to Samuel Tully to Jorah Mormont to Varys to Littlefinger.
And now Sansa is totally evil. I'm down. I'm so totally down.
He was even featured on Jimmy Kimmel Live, when Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow, was a guest on the show. After seeing Steve on Kimmel, the creators asked him if he'd like to make a cameo appearance on the show. Steve immediately responded yes. He said, "I was like, I'll wrestle a bear naked, I don't care. I'll do whatever you want me to do." So then he contacted them back afterwards and said he didn't know what their plan was for him, but it would mean a lot if they gave him one of those trademark gruesome death scenes. They wrote him back and basically said, "Actually, Steve, that was exactly what we had in mind. You'll bite the bullet, don't worry." They flew him from his home in Ottawa, Canada, to Northern Ireland to film Season 6, Episode 8, No One. He plays a member of the Brothers Without Banners and meets his untimely end at the hands of the Hound and his axe.
We did a TV show about a year ago to the day, and that feels like 10 years ago, but it also feels like it was just yesterday.
Coldplay drummer Will Champion. Season 3, Episode 9, The Red Wedding, was the event every person who had read the books was waiting for. Watching their friends and family react to The Red Wedding upon seeing it for the first time, knowing what was about to transpire, is one of the highlights of the show's history. The showrunner stated if they could just make it to the end of the Season 3 and The Red Wedding, they'd be able to see the epic series through to the end. This episode, more than any other, may be the moment when the show exploded into the public's consciousness. The Red Wedding featured the deaths of several main characters, including Robb Stark and Catelyn Stark, in an epic betrayal. The Starks went to the twins to celebrate the wedding between Edmure Tully and Rosalind Frey. Rosalind was set to marry Robb Stark, but he married Talisa Mager instead. Walder Frey never forgave Robb and betrayed them after the ceremony was over. Before the betrayal, the band begins playing The Reigns of Castamere, a Lannister song about the destruction of a rival house. In the band, who are also assassins armed with crossbows, is Coldplay percussionist Will Champion banging a drum. What episode represented a bigger turning point for the show than The Red Wedding? Sigur Rós. As a result of the Red Wedding, the Lannisters had won the War of the Five Kings. With House Stark all but destroyed, it was no longer necessary for King Joffrey Baratheon to marry Sansa Stark in a political alliance. Instead, Sansa Stark was wed to Tyrion Lannister, and Joffrey married Margaery of House Tyrell, the richest house in the Seven Kingdoms, in the episode The Lion and the Rose. During the feast after the ceremony, Joffrey was thoroughly entertained by a comedic reenactment of the War of the Five Kings played out by dwarves. Joffrey was also quite uninspired by a brooding and mournful rendition of The Reigns of Castamere, featuring a church organ by none other than the Icelandic band Sigur Rós.
Very good, very good. Off you go.
The Reigns of Castamere was one of many songs in A Song of Ice and Fire written by author George R.R. Martin. Later in the episode, King Joffrey is poisoned and dies in his parents' arms. Tyrion Lannister is accused by Cersei of being the killer, but we find out in later episodes who the real conspirators were. Joffrey's death sets off a chain of events that ultimately leads to the weakening of House Lannister through self-inflicted wounds, as tragedy after tragedy strikes their family.
Could you get a six-pack of beer in your hat? With ice?
I'm willing to try it.
Mets pitcher Noah Syndergaard. In Season 7, Daenerys Targaryen invades the continent of Westeros with her army of Unsullied, her Dothraki cavalry, and 3 fire-breathing dragons. This season marked the beginning of the end for the show, as the story enters the 3rd and final act. Now well beyond where the books are, the showrunners were forced to write most of the material without the aid of George R.R. Martin, sharing only major plot points with the yet-to-be-released books. Queen Cersei draws first blood by sending Euron Greyjoy to sink Daenerys' fleet, heading for Dorne. The Unsullied managed to make it past and lay siege to Casterly Rock, taking it easily against a token force. Meanwhile, Jaime Lannister has marched the Lannister forces to Highgarden to defeat the Tyrells, and Euron Greyjoy destroys the remaining fleet carrying the Unsullied from behind. This is when Daenerys unleashes the Dothraki and her dragon Drogon on the Lannister army. One of the commanders of this army, who can clearly be seen tossing a spear, was New York Mets pitcher Noah Syndergaard. We can only assume his character didn't survive the battle, as he isn't among the prisoners in the next episode. What do do you think? Was Noah's character cooked by Drogon in one of his bombing runs against the Lannisters?
If I lay here, if I just lay here.
Gary Lightbody. Gary Lightbody is the lead singer and rhythm guitarist for the alternative rock band Snow Patrol. Their most famous song is Chasing Cars. Yeah, you've definitely heard it. Lightbody was born in Northern Ireland. He revealed himself to be a huge fan of the show and hung out with some of the cast in Belfast. In Season 3, Episode 3, The Walk of Punishment, Lightbody leads a company of Roose Bolton's soldiers in a rendition of A Bear and the Maiden. This song is another one of many written by George R.R. Martin for A Song of Ice and Fire. This episode of the show was also the directorial debut for showrunner David Benioff. In this episode, Brienne of Tarth and Jaime Lannister have been captured by House Bolton soldiers. Later in the show, Jaime Lannister convinces Locke not to let the Bolton soldiers harm Brienne because she is from the Sapphire Isle. Rather than tell him it received the name for its blue waters, Jaime suggests the Isle is rich in sapphire mines and that Brienne's father will pay handsomely for her safe return. Jaime takes the negotiation too far, promising his own father Tywin Lannister will reward them with gold for his safe return to King's Landing. Locke takes offense to Jaime's sense of entitlement and chops his hand off instead. Ed Sheeran. The most famous cameo you may not have noticed belongs to Ed Sheeran. You may recognize Ed Sheeran from his well-known songs Shape of You or Thinking Out Loud. If you're a nerd like we are, you will probably recognize him from his performance of I See Fire for The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. In Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone, Sheeran plays a Lannister soldier. He belongs to the nicest bunch of Lannister soldiers you'll ever meet. Sheeran sings a rendition of The Hands of Gold, which is yet another song written by George R.R. Martin for A Song of Ice and Fire. Arya encounters this squad of Lannister soldiers along the road to King's Landing after assassinating every living male member of House Frey as vengeance for the Red Wedding back in Season 3. This cameo actually may have caused Ed Sheeran to quit Twitter as a result of the criticism he received from hardcore Game of Thrones fans. It turns out Macy Williams, who plays Arya Stark, is an Ed Sheeran superfan, and the showrunners created this scene as a surprise for her. When Arya tells the Lannister soldiers she's going to King's Landing to kill the Queen, Cersei Lannister, all of his soldiers burst out laughing. Lucky for them. If you had a Game of Thrones cameo, what would you want it to be? A Lannister soldier? An undead minion? Perhaps a member of the Night's Watch? Tell us what your favorite episode and cameo are in the comments below. Be sure to click the red subscribe button for more in-depth Game of Thrones commentary, along with videos about your favorite comic book heroes. Thanks for watching!